You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
Hi everyone. First off, sorry for the way I sound today. The pollen count has been pretty high the past several days, so my allergies have been acting up like crazy. I'm pretty sure my voice is probably reflecting that. Anyway, on today's episode of Asians in Hockey, I'm handing the host's microphone over to my friend Ava Wood, more widely known around the internet as 365 Hockey Girl. But before she takes over, I do want to share a special message with you all. This week marks the first anniversary of the Asians in Hockey podcast, and I honestly cannot believe we've been doing this for a whole year. So many of you have reached out to me this past year and shared how you've learned a lot through this podcast, and it's so encouraging to hear that. But I have to say that I've learned a lot through this podcast as well. I've learned about the history of Asian people in the sport and the many players of Asian descent who are continuing to contribute to it today. I've learned about hockey culture and the many people who are studying it and working to change it for the better. And I've learned about the many new communities and content creators who are building a healthier approach to hockey media and coverage of the sport. And I've made some amazing friends along the way. From the many guests who have contributed to the show, to others who have provided me connections to the larger Asian hockey landscape, I cannot thank each of you enough. From my contributing producers, Chad and Chris, who were the very first to connect me to other Asian hockey players, coaches, and builders, to educators and writers like Courtney Cito and Joshvina Shah, who have helped me gain a better understanding of hockey culture and its problematic history, and even to content creators like today's guest host Ava, who helped me understand some stuff about social media that I didn't understand before. I also want to thank Rose from Seattle, who was the very first to contribute financially to this podcast. I am honored to know that what I'm doing here was worth supporting in that way. And of course, I want to thank each and every one of you who has listened to this podcast or shared my content on social media. Whether you've written to me directly, shared a review, or just subscribed to the show, I want you to know that you've helped grow this little community of Asian hockey fans, players, and other participants, and your support this past year has meant the world to me. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Ava and I recorded this first part of the episode over a month ago, but a little over a week ago, we got the chance to hang out in person and together be a part of the historic PWHL game at Madison Square Garden. So we just had to get back on a call to talk about that weekend, and we'll get into that stuff in the second part of the episode. So stick around for the whole thing to hear our thoughts on the PWHL games that weekend and the experience of seeing the women's hockey community converging on the world's most famous arena.
Welcome back to the Asians in Hockey podcast. I'm Ava, also known as 365 Hockey Girl, and this is a not-so-hostile takeover of the podcast. I'm guest hosting today because we're putting Nate in the hot seat for me to interview so you can get a proper introduction to your regular host. Let me introduce myself real quick. Like I said, my name is Ava, and I create hockey content under the online name 365 Hockey Girl. I focus almost exclusively on women's hockey, particularly the PWHL, and you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I also have a Discord server where you can hang out with other PWHL fans and a newsletter you can sign up for because social media companies are kind of evil. We'll put all the links into the show notes of today's episode. If you want a little more detail on my story, Nate interviewed me at the end of season 1 of the show, so head back there after listening to this episode to hear more from me. Before we get too far into the episode, we've got a few favors to ask you. First off, if it's safe for you to do this, could you please take out your phone right now and send this podcast to 1 or 2 friends? One of the best ways we get the word out about the show and build this community is through word of mouth, so we'd love if you could help us out by spreading the word. Second, it would be so great if you could post a quick 5-star review of the show on Apple Podcasts. This is super helpful for building our audience on all podcast platforms. And to those of you who have already left a review, thank you so much for your kind words. Third, if you've been listening for a while and you'd love to help out with the production and hosting costs, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com. Just head over to buymeacoffee.com/AsiansInHockey to make a donation. As a gift, Nate will send you a cool Asians in Hockey sticker if you donate at least $5 US. I already have my sticker. It's really cute. Just send a message through Instagram or on asiansinhockey.com so we can be sure that you get your sticker. And finally, we'd love to hear directly from you with your thoughts, stories, and feedback. You can get in touch by visiting asiansinhockey.com/contact and sending a voice note or email. We might even read your message or play your voice note on an upcoming episode, with your permission, of course. After the break, I've got some PWHL updates for you. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Phil Yu, and I'm the host of All the Asians on Star Trek, the podcast in which I interview all the Asians on Star Trek. I'm talking to actors, writers, directors, stunt people, background extras. You know, all the Asians on Star Trek. Find out more at alltheasiansonstartrek.com. Part of the Potluck Podcast Collective. Live long and prosper.
Welcome back. So by the time this episode comes out, some of this might be out of date, but since this is Asians in Hockey, I want to talk about some Asian players to watch in the PWHL. First is Anna Szigeti. She plays for the Vancouver Golden Knights and is from Commerce, Michigan. Now, this is really cool because I actually got my mom and my stepdad tickets for the PWHL TakeOver game in Detroit. So my mom, who's Asian, did get to see Anna Szigeti play. And yeah, that was really cool. Next up is Katie Chan. She's from Richmond, British Columbia, and she also gets to play for the Vancouver Golden Knights. And she scored her first ever PWHL goal at home in the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver. I've gotten to go up to the Pacific Coliseum to watch some games. It's an amazing environment for women's hockey. And last but certainly not least, Nicole Gosling. Gosling is a defender with the Montreal Victoire. And I got to see her score her first ever PWHL goal in Quebec City. How freaking cool is that? These players are just taking the league by storm, and I'm so excited to watch their careers continue to flourish in the PWHL. Since I'm in charge today, we're going to skip the NHL segment and go straight to another break. But Nate might not let me come back if I don't at least mention Nick Suzuki. I also love Nick Suzuki. I was rooting for him in the Olympics, and I got to see his goal. I posted on Instagram. But yeah, I'm excited to hear more about Nate's story of how he got involved in hockey and what prompted him to start this podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey, do you enjoy reading, or are you thinking about getting back into reading?
Do you want to diversify and decolonize your bookshelf? And are you interested in exploring exciting stories from Asian and Asian American voices?
Then you should check out Books and Boba, a book club and podcast dedicated to books by Asian and Asian American authors.
Each month on Books and Boba, we pick a book by an Asian author to read and discuss on the show.
We read a variety of genres, including contemporary and historical fiction, sci-fi and fantasy, romance and cozy mysteries, and so much more.
Our past book club picks have included Pachinko by Minjin Lee, Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribeye, Yellowface by R.F. Kwong, and The Fortunes of Jaded Women by Carolyn Quinn.
We also chat with some amazing Asian authors on the podcast, as well as review the latest publishing news in Asian American literature.
Listen to us now on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts, or learn more by looking us up at booksandboba.com.
Part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.
We're back! I guess I have to share the mic with you now, Nate. Okay. You've been asking people questions on this show. Now it's your turn to answer them. All right, let's start at the beginning. How did you get into hockey?
So, I actually got into hockey when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I don't know, for anybody who grew up in the 90s, the movie was The Mighty Ducks. And that's what sucked me in. I saw The Mighty Ducks when I was like 7 years old. And then I went to my first hockey game for my 8th birthday that same year. I think it was like 1992 was when the movie came out or something like that. And I went and saw my first hockey game, and it was over at the old Brendan Burns Arena, which is no longer there. But it was the Devils versus the Habs. The Habs came into town, and I didn't know who to cheer for. I didn't realize that like I'm supposed to cheer for the home team, and that's who the home team was. So I just cheered for the logo I recognized from the movie, and that's how I became a Habs fan. So that was kind of my start in hockey. And then as a result of that, I gave hockey a try, I think when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I was awful at it, but I still, I still wanted to give it a shot. I only played for like, I think 1 season or 2 seasons before I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Nice. Well, when you think back on those early days, obviously you talk about the Mighty Ducks, but what else in the sport really pulled you in?
I think it was the speed. I think it was I was really into indoor sports. So like basketball was like the sport that I ended up playing the most. I think as a little bit of a germaphobe as a kid, I'm still a little bit of a germaphobe now, but like it was a little heightened at different points in my life. And I think playing a sport that involved getting kind of muddy just wasn't interesting to me. So that's why basketball became my sport. So hockey, because it was indoors, that was interesting to me. The ice surface, the way players moved, I think it was mesmerizing when I was a kid. So that's what really kind of sucked me into the sport and got me excited to give it a try.
Nice. What pulled you away from organized hockey as a kid?
God, there were a few. I don't really know how to like encapsulate it really. I think there were a few little things that all sort of piled up. I think one was the fact that I had a lot of trouble making friends. I couldn't make friends on my team. I just I didn't fit in. I think because a lot of the kids on my team had started so much earlier than I did, and they had already formed their friend groups and everything. Also, they were all going to different schools than I was going to. I went to a very small private school as a kid, and these kids all had their own cliques and friendships, and I just couldn't crack it. And I think that was part of it. I also think I just didn't really. I struggled with skating at that age. Ice skating, getting started on ice skating was tough. I think I eventually was able to pick up I know I was eventually able to pick up skating skills through rollerblading, and then I translated that to ice, and then I found ice so much easier as a result, but I didn't pick that up until much later. So that's kind of what really pulled me away from organized hockey, along with just that feeling of not fitting in. And like all my friends were doing other things, right? They were playing basketball. That was the organized sport that all my friends were playing. So I got into basketball as my organized sport. I did keep playing like street hockey and roller hockey, and that's kind of where I picked up some of those skills that ended up serving me like later in life. But as far as the organized aspect of sports, it just I couldn't hack it at that age.
You mentioned not fitting in, and you also mentioned that you grew up in a predominantly white area.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other Asian kids playing hockey, or do you feel that contributed to your not fitting in?
Looking back, probably. I don't think I really, because back then I didn't recognize myself as Asian, really. Like I subconsciously, like that real, identity sense. I fought against that identity so much, and I think I really wanted to fit in with the white kids, and all the white kids were playing hockey, but I didn't find friendships there. And when you're a kid, if your friends aren't doing something, you're not going to want to do it, right? If you can't make friends in the thing that you're doing, you're just going to fall away from it. So that's I think for me where that happened. And yeah, you're right. Like I think if there had been other Asian kids, maybe I might have stuck it out a little bit more. But I also know that I didn't really want to be around other Asian kids. I had a lot of self-hatred for that aspect of my personality. That aspect of my identity. And that internalized racism was very strong in me at that point in my life.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds really tough, but I'm glad that at this point in your life, you feel so confident in your heritage and you're doing so much to build Asian community. So that's awesome. You ended up coming back to the sport later in life, how did that come about, and how is the game different when you come to it as an adult versus as a kid?
Yeah, so that actually came about because when I think as an adult, when I was coming up on my 30th birthday, I really wanted to make a goal for myself that I was going to learn to play hockey for real. I got back into being a hockey fan a few years prior. I was dating this girl who was a diehard Devils fan, and she had season tickets. So I ended up going to a bunch of hockey games, and I caught the bug again. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to play the sport. So I joined this like beginner travel league back in, I think it was 2014. Yeah. And that's how I like relearned how to play hockey. And I ended up just continuing to played in a couple more teams, joined a bunch of different leagues, and got really sucked back into it. The game coming to it as an adult versus as a kid, I think there's a little bit more of a recreational aspect to it, because I know at that point there's no yes, it's still competitive, and I had people on my team who took it way more seriously than I did, which is fine. You know, it can still be fun. But I think there's that aspect of also I'm doing this for myself. Like I'm making this choice, which makes it more fun, and it makes it more enjoyable. And I think there's also a little bit more understanding of kind of the landscape of the sport. And because I had played basketball a lot growing up and had developed more understanding of sports in general through that, and how plays get set up, how the ball moves, and then translate that to how the puck moves, and how things set up on the ice, I think I was able to come into the game with a little bit more knowledge already about, you know, the function of a sport. So that was helpful. I also think that approaching it, you know, like I was saying before, approaching it as an adult, you have much more of an appreciation of what you're doing. And I'm also not going to do stupid things, I think. But at the same time, the negative aspect is that, so like there's such a variation of skill level that I think I missed out on. If I had kept playing and then played into high school, I think playing on a team where, you know, everybody is at a similar skill level would have been much better. When I was playing as an adult, and they try to do this and in different rec leagues, but it doesn't always end up splitting up perfectly. So there's always, you know, people on my team who just, there were a couple people on my team who were way better than everyone else. And that sort of detracted from everyone's enjoyment. And then there were those players who wanted the team to be really, really, really good. So they kept bringing in those high skill level players. And then the players who were like really not good, just sat on the bench the entire game. And I do remember the first team that I played for, there were only like 3 guys on the team who could skate backwards, myself included. And I never wanted to play defense. I didn't want to block a puck. It just didn't seem all that interesting to me, but I ended up stuck playing defense because there were only a handful of us who could skate backwards, which really kind of sucked. So anyway, those are some of the different experiences that I noticed playing as an adult. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story. I think it's cool to see how non-linear it is. I mean, obviously Alyssa Liu is really popular now, right?
Oh, yeah.
She was in a sport as a kid, just took a break, came back. So I think it's cool that you also did that. But yeah, since my platform is all about women's hockey, I have to ask, how did you become a women's hockey fan? And I've always appreciated that this podcast has prioritized women's hockey along with men's hockey right from the beginning. So when did that start, and what are some differences between the men's game and the women's game in your eyes?
So it actually started somewhere around 20, like leading up to the 2014 Olympics. Seeing women at that level has always been important to me in any sport, right? Like whether it's basketball, soccer. I'm a big women's soccer fan. We've got Gotham FC over here. They're 2-time champions, and I'm a huge fan of Gotham FC. So like I always want to see, I always feel like women, they play sports a little bit differently from men, in my opinion, kind of better, because especially in a sport like hockey, and this kind of touches on the differences between the game. While there is a lot of skill at the men, I don't want to detract from like the men's skill level. Obviously, they are incredibly skilled players, but something that I've noticed that really kind of drives me nuts about the men's game is it's constantly interrupted by fighting or the potential for fighting, and these scrums, which is fun in some cases, but when it happens way too often over the course of a game, it gets annoying, because I'm personally somebody who really loves the flow of the game. I really appreciate seeing speed, skill. Yes, I do love watching big hits. I'm one of those people who always is like, when I would coach, I would tell kids, you want to get the puck away from another player, you've got to play the body. So a big hit, a good check, within the rules of that level of the game, of course. What I find so much more fascinating is that, like in the NHL and in men's hockey in general, a big hit will often lead to extracurricular activity, whereas in women's hockey, a big hit doesn't always have to interrupt the flow of the game. And that's something that I find really fascinating. But going back to my history with women's,
can I add on to that? Because
absolutely.
I 100% agree with that. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot. I also came from a rugby background, and obviously the entire point of, not the entire point of rugby, but a big point of rugby is big hits, right? Mm-hmm. But I would have never thought of rugby as necessarily being a violent sport, because there's a difference between obviously strength and, hitting in a sport versus just violence for violence sake. And while there are obviously extracurriculars in women's hockey, I think it's cool that we get the big hits without what I feel is just violence for violence sake all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's a balance there. I think, I totally recognize that like the game has changed quite a bit. And from the 80s and 90s, there was just fights would break out all the time. And I recognize nowadays that's much less. But within the last like 2 or 3 years, we have seen an increase in fighting in the NHL. And I find that a little bit annoying, especially because it's hard when people come to the NHL from other sports to see its or come to hockey from other sports to see its finesse, to see the speed, because that's what attracted me to hockey, was that speed. And it constantly gets interrupted. So that's something I find annoying. But going back to like my journey with women's hockey, I think around the 2014 Olympics, I wanted to like focus in on women's hockey because I was getting into hockey in general. And then I saw Julie Chu, and that was what kind of sucked me in, because I was like, oh, the captain of Team USA is an Asian woman? Like, that's pretty cool. So the 2014 Olympics sucked me in. I got really hooked in that. The heartbreaking loss for Team USA. But that's what sucked me into women's hockey. And then, a couple years after that, I started coaching with hockey in New Jersey, and one of the coaches played on that team. I didn't know this until I think like a couple sessions, and we were in the coach's dressing room afterwards, and we were just sort of chatting, getting to know each other or whatever. And what's your name? She's like, my name's Shelly, and I'm like, so what do you do? She's like, well, I play hockey, and I'm like, what do you mean you play hockey? She's like, yeah, I play hockey. And I'm like, who do you play for? She's like, I play for this team here, the Metropolitan Riveters, and I was on Team USA. I'm like, wait, what? So I went home, I Googled her, and I'm like, she was on the team. I've been coaching with this woman for like, 3 weeks at that point, and lo and behold, I had been coaching with a Team USA hockey player. And then through that, and then, we developed a little bit of a friendship, played together a couple times. And then she invited me to all of their playoffs, to their playoff run in 2018, and then of course that was the year they won the Isabel Cup, and she invited me to the after party where I got to meet like Megan Duggan, Danny Rylan, Madison Packer, like all of these incredible women in the sport of hockey, and that of course like really solidified my involvement in women's hockey. I ended up getting season tickets to the Riveters the year after, and so like for me, that's why the PWHL has been tough for me to get into because I really miss the Riveters. But that's sort of my story with women's hockey.
That is so freaking cool. What a series of events. But it's cool.
I know, right?
It's cool that you've been rocking with women's hockey for a long time at this point. You have that perspective of being like involved with the PHF and having been there to now with the PWHL. So
yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah, and then some shout outs to some Asian hockey players from those days. We had Mie Dench on the Riveters, and Reagan Rust also on the Riveters, who came on and hung out with me on this very podcast. So some really cool Asian people have been involved, and yeah, I hope to get in touch with some more. So Nicole, if you're listening.
Yeah, I also want to give you a shout out for the work you've been doing to promote women's sled hockey as well, and having Alana Ma on the podcast. I love listening to that episode.
Yeah. Oh, and she's been so supportive of what we're doing here. She even came on and did like a little fan segment because she's an Oilers fan. So she came on again to talk about that. She was here in New York City not too long ago, and we missed each other because I think I was up in Montreal at the time that she was in New York City, and we weren't able to meet up.
Well, at what point did you start thinking about your identity as someone of Asian heritage in the context of hockey? Was there a specific moment that shifted your awareness?
Yeah. So I think outside of hockey, I was kind of coming to a reckoning of my own Asian American identity. There were a few things that kind of came up. I was like I was saying before, I was in a predominantly white environment. I was in a very religious environment growing up, and that kept with me throughout a lot of my life. And as I was reaching sort of what I didn't know at the time, but what I know now looking back, was the end of my involvement in religion. That was sort of when I started recognizing myself as not white. And I stopped kind of trying to fit in with white people. But it wasn't really until a few years later with the pandemic that the more of that awakening happened. And it was sort of a rude awakening, really. Like, I had some racial slurs thrown at me that I hadn't heard since I was a kid, which was jarring because it ended up throwing me back to a time that was not so great for me, a time in my life where I was really trying to suppress my racial identity, and then it got thrust in my face in the midst of this pandemic. And then of course the news was being filled with Asian people getting killed, stabbed right outside Chinatown or shoved in front of subways. And of course there was the Atlanta shooting. So a lot of that was sort of kind of reawakening me, or like fully awakening me to who I am as an Asian American. And so that kind of that prompted me to really dive into my heritage and my history. And it got pretty dark because like things have not been good for Asian people in this country. And so I think because of how heavy and dark so much of that research and reckoning was for me, I also wanted to find those points of, joy and happiness. And yes, there's like the uplifting moments of finding those Asian American activists that have kind of been a part of our history. But at the same time, I was like, well, what about some of the lighter stuff, quote unquote. And hockey kind of became that thing. So that's where that kind of started for me. And then when I did dive into the history of Asians in hockey, it opened up to me, and I started finding, not just, current players like Matt Dumba and Jason Robertson, but like throughout history, of course, Paul Kariya. And then going back further, you got Jim Pack, and then the story of Larry Kwong kind of came to my face, and I was like, damn, that's something I had no idea about. And I had sat through sessions with Willie O'Ree and talking about, the history of Black people in hockey. And I didn't even know up until, just last year or 2 years ago that the first non-Indigenous person of color in the NHL was a Chinese Canadian. Like that, I didn't find that out until 2 years ago. So yeah, that's kind of what sort of woke me up to who I am and how that sort of fits into this sport that I love so much.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry that you had those negative experiences that you mentioned. And yeah, obviously the pandemic was a really tough time, but it's good to see how much you've grown and how you're able to connect with your Asian heritage now. And also the Larry Kwong story is so special. That was the first episode I ever listened to of this podcast. I had never heard of him before either. It's episode 1 if you're listening now. And yeah, I especially love talking about Asians in hockey because, it's important to know the different activists that came before, but even just looking at Asians in hockey, there's so many lessons you can learn that can be applied to all areas of life. So really appreciate
absolutely
that.
Yeah.
How has your understanding of race and community changed the way you engage with the sports?
So I think it's been tough, right? Because hockey, particularly in if you look at the context of the major sports here in North America, hockey is in some ways the most forward thinking, when it comes to science, the science of a sport, when it comes to advancing metrics, analytics, and how the sport is played. It's always forward thinking. Science is so involved in the sport of hockey. So in that sense, it's a very progressive sport, more so than many of the other sports. But at the same time, its culture is very traditional and conservative, more so than pretty much any of the other major North American sports. And so I think that has really been something that I've sort of had to work through over the years, recognizing that hockey, it's seen as the white man's sport because that's who has access to it to be able to play it, and this is sort of increasing across all sports, but afford tickets to watch games. But, the players that are out there on the ice, the coaches, the executives, the owners, everyone in this sport, it's very white centric. It's a very white culture, which leads to a lot of very frustrating tendencies and actions that are taken in not just the NHL, but in hockey leagues and organizations across North America. So I think that has really kind of changed how I interact with the sport. When I started this podcast, I sort of just wanted to highlight Asian American, Asian Canadian, Asian diaspora stories in the sport of hockey. And I knew that, hockey is a very white-centric sport, but I don't think I realized that it was going to involve so much of me kind of digging into this culture and having to wrestle with the toxicity that's inherent to hockey culture. And not necessarily inherent, sorry, maybe that's the wrong word. But the toxicity...
Toxicity that has been built into.
Yes, because it's not inherent to hockey culture. Hockey culture can be something so much more inclusive and wholesome and healthy, but it has kind of found its way into the DNA of hockey, this toxicity and frankly, overt racism and sexism and abuse. So I didn't realize when I started this podcast that that's something I would have to wrestle with. I really thought I could bifurcate my life. Like my social justice and activism could be over here, and then the sort of talking about hockey, it can be over here. And they might intersect a little bit here and there because I'm talking about race. But lo and behold, here I am constantly having to wrestle with it on a regular basis. But I think I could still have fun, and still do fun things with this podcast and with hockey in general, while also recognizing that there's this stuff that we need to talk about and tackle.
That is so interesting that you say that, because I think that's kind of the approach that we've seen in a lot of the ways that hockey interacts with race. They'll interact with it to share celebratory stories, but don't necessarily want to get into the nitty-gritty of the social justice aspects. But sometimes that's really not possible. You have to talk about both to tell the full story. So
yeah, because there's a reason that these are important stories. There's a reason the Larry Kwong story is an important one, and it's not a positive reason. There's a reason that Asian people are pioneers in these areas. Why? Because in a truly healthy society, they wouldn't be pioneers.
yeah,
These stories wouldn't be the big, incredible stories that they are. The reason that they're there is because there have been gatekeepers in this sport for far too long. So yeah, I think, and another thing that also was very interesting is that, hockey didn't start out as a white sport, and it just became that. It was an indigenous sport. It was heavily influenced at its inception by the freed enslaved people who traveled north of the border after escaping the chattel slavery here in the U.S. And that's the roots of hockey. That's where it began. But it has since evolved into what we see today, which is in so many ways unfortunate that the people who sort of pioneered and created this sport are now sitting on the outside of it.
yeah. I just wanted to build a little bit off of what you said. I know this is your episode. So I don't know if
No,
you want me to be
absolutely. No, go
talking.
for it. Go for it.
Oh.
We're having a conversation here, so
Okay.
it's some good back and forth.
Well, I think my understanding of race and community has definitely impacted the way I interact with hockey, because like you, I think I also felt quite frustrated about the sport being a very white sport, especially when I first came onto the podcast. I honestly felt a little bit bad about it because I was feeling so negative in that moment about it always being a white sport and some of the negative culture. But definitely from listening to this podcast, learning more of the history about Asians in hockey, learning about Black hockey history, learning about hockey development, like with the We Read Lines book, the more I learn, the more tools I have in my tool belt. Not to feel like I can even change everything, because alone we're not going to be able to change things, but even just understanding it, understanding what are the problems here. And that also makes the celebration of these players even more special to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was recently talking with Jasvina Shah and Evan Moore, who co-wrote the book Game Misconduct, which really dives into hockey's toxic culture. And Jasvina kind of reminded me that the way that we're going to see change in hockey culture isn't going to be top down. It's not going to be from the executives and the team ownerships and fucking Gary Bettman. It's going to be through these kinds of conversations. When you and I sit down and talk about our involvement in the sport of hockey and why we love it so much. When Evan and Jasvina sit down and talk about hockey culture and the structures that need to be examined and critiqued, when Rick Westhead gets out there and posts on Twitter and Threads to talk about the culture of hockey. These are all the things that will push hockey culture to change. So that's where I'm kind of optimistic. It can be dark and depressing, but at the same time, I'm like, but we're doing it. We're changing hockey culture just by by having these conversations. Like, your platform is changing hockey culture, what you're doing with 365 Hockey Girl, you know?
Thank you. And I get excited about it because I don't even really think of it as changing hockey culture. I think of it as we're creating our own cultures. You're creating your own culture within Asians in hockey, right? How can we create our own cultures as part of a larger culture? So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, that was pretty cool that you got that shout out on Jocks and Jills.
Oh yeah, shout out Julia Tosheri. Yeah. Well, how did this podcast come about, and what were you hoping to address when you started it?
Yeah. So like I was saying before, it was a product of kind of my own sort of reckoning with my racial heritage and my identity. And yeah, like I had a friend who prompted me to get this podcast started. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then I think what I wanted to do ultimately at the start, I was like, I just want to highlight these stories because it's my favorite sport. Now, I've come and gone from it over the years, and there have been times where it's taken a backseat to other sports that I like to watch and get involved in. But at the end of the day, it's kind of my home. It's the sport that I have at this point now played the longest, and it's the sport that I've had the most involvement in through all kinds of different areas, and so I wanted to highlight the fact that people like me are involved at the sport at so many different levels, right? Like, I had conversations with people who are working in the sport at the grassroots level, who are doing organizing and even coaching. Like I spoke with Chi In-si, who is a coach down in Tulsa in a place that has no real hockey culture. And he's running a junior hockey program down there, which is incredible.
That episode was super interesting to me, by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
It was so cool to see that. And then I decided, I got to go check out this ice facility that they have in Tulsa. I was looking at videos and pictures online, and I'm like, damn, I wish we had something like that up here. Granted, we do have way more hockey rinks all over the place, but to have that kind of a facility, that would be really cool. And then, yeah, from somebody like that to, players, getting a chance to talk to Paris O'Brien, who was the goalie at the Beijing Olympics, and to talk about his experience. And I mean, that was such a great conversation, and he's been so supportive of what we're doing at the podcast as well. And then, even to I definitely fanboyed a little bit when I got to talk to Reagan Rust, because like I said, I was a huge Metropolitan Riveters fan, so to be able to have her on the podcast was really incredible. So yeah, I think I was really kind of hoping to address the fact that there's a lack of conversation surrounding minorities in hockey. And sure, there have been some, hard-hitting documentaries, and there has been conversation. I know the Willie O'Ree Foundation has been doing a lot of work to get the word out there about Black people in hockey. Black Girl Hockey Club has been doing incredible work. And even, I know you're connected with Erica Ayala. She's been doing a whole lot of work to get the profile out there. And I was like, I want to be a part of that kind of stuff. And I think given my sort of location within the sport, I'm like, why don't I do this? And just because there are so many people out there who are doing great things in the sport of hockey who look like us. Why not highlight all those stories, give all of those stories a place to kind of, call home, quote unquote. And that's where this podcast kind of came from.
Awesome. And I think what you're doing is great, especially focusing on Asians in hockey, because I think there is a lot of conversation, obviously, about Black folks in hockey. And I especially appreciate how intersectional this podcast is, and how you also bring up, Black community and find ways to relate things together. Especially with the Larry Kwong and Herb Carnegie thing. I remember listening to that. I was like, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to say too is like, for me, to your point about that intersectionality, I think, for so long, like we've struggled within our races to work together to recognize that, like, the problem here in this country is not that another race is taking our piece of the pie, right? Like in my own family, my family has struggled with anti-Blackness quite a lot. I think part of it has been the fact that my own grandfather was living in an urban environment that was lower income, and he was mugged by a couple of Black guys, and so that has tainted his perception of Black people, and it's a struggle that I've had to wrestle with in my own family. But at the same time, on the flip side of things, there's also that frustration, and I recognize it, and I see where it comes from, with Black people looking at us with our proximity to whiteness. But at the end of the day, we're all being used as sort of tools and weapons against each other to prevent ourselves from working together to address the problems that are facing all of us. And so that's also one of the reasons why I talk the way I talk, why I do what I do, because I want to build those bridges and help people recognize that we have a common struggle in this country, right? Like to teach Asian people that were it not for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Immigration Act of 1965 would not have been passed. We owe our existence in this country to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X's fights, So yeah, that's kind of that's where that comes from for me.
Facts, King. Yeah, for people listening who might not be familiar with me, I'm also Black and Asian, and I definitely feel that my background as a Black person has definitely like informed like how I navigate my Asianness, just having that understanding and that upbringing of how to navigate race, even if I don't really look Black necessarily. I don't know. I'm really racially ambiguous, but
yeah,
it's been.
I mean, you could also pass for Filipino, which
I
they're
get
the best
that.
Asians.
People are
so.
always really disappointed when I tell them I'm not Filipino, actually. But yeah, that's been an interesting perspective to have for me as well, as for sure.
Yeah.
If someone asked you today what hockey means to you, how would you answer?
Ooh, what's interesting is like when I first looked at this question, I think that actually changed, given everything that has been happening in the hockey world just in the past few days. Like when we're recording this, or past couple weeks, when we're recording this, we're sitting in the aftermath of the U.S. winning 2 gold medals in hockey, men's and women's. And the way that the men's team handled that, and like I looked at that and I'm like, I'm not shocked. And none of us, anybody who's been in the hockey world for a minute, would not be shocked by what we saw on display. But it was still kind of heartbreaking. I think part of it was that with heated rivalry with the PWHL, hockey is sort of at this inflection point where it could really erupt. It could blow up and become so much more than it had been previously. And the NHL went and fucked it up. And the USA Hockey men's fucked it up. Like, and again, I'm not surprised. But for me, I think what hockey means to me, it means a constant struggle against gatekeepers, a constant struggle against, I'll be brave, against white supremacy.
No, I was thinking the same exact thing. It's literally that. It's literally that.
Mm-hmm.
Not an exaggeration at all to say that.
Oh no. That's I think what it represents and what it means to me. On my conversation with Evan and Joshvina, Evan was talking about how, like, because he's a Black guy, and amongst his Black friends, they're all like, dude, a black hockey fan, it's kind of like a black Republican. And it's sort of that like moment of that's sort of the world we live in, right? Like we're these, is it worth trying to stay inside of hockey culture and fix it? For me, I think, yes, I don't know if I'm ever going to try to fix hockey culture, but I love this sport too much to allow it to constantly be held by those people. So that's, for me, hockey means that struggle. You know, when I first read this question, the answer I would have given simply was hockey means community. And I think it still kind of means that to me. And especially with what I'm doing in this podcast, like the fact that I was able to become friends with people like Chad Soon and Courtney Cito, who I got to go skate with in Ottawa for this really cool community event. And to just see people rallying around minority identities in this sport. Like, yeah, that's huge. And I think maybe after the dust has settled on a lot of the what's gone on in the aftermath of the Olympics, I think I'll go back to a little bit of that as being what hockey means for me. But right now, hockey just means struggle. And it means a fight against white supremacy. So, yeah.
Damn. Yeah, honestly, this whole Olympics thing, I was just like, this is just whiteness at work. You cannot separate that whole debacle from whiteness. And honestly, it reminds me of how white people are afraid of like, what is it? Like the shifting demographics. It's like they want to grow hockey, but they don't realize that this country is changing and hockey will not grow unless you welcome everybody. So that's just where we're at right now. Like, queer hockey, black hockey, Asian hockey, women's hockey, that's the future. And that's what's going to drive the sport forward.
Nope, absolutely.
Yeah. So looking back over your journey with hockey, what feels most meaningful to you now?
I think I'd go back to my answer to the previous question and pull out that part about community, right? That's what I think feels most meaningful to me. Is that intersection of Asian people and hockey. Like being able to be invited into this community of people who have been involved in this game and have been doing some incredible work to like lay the groundwork for me to even just like, I'm standing on the shoulders of people like Jashvina, like Courtney, like Chad, who and Chris, one of my contributing producers, who have been doing so much work to sort of, you know, prep things for me to be able to say, hey, I want to share these stories and I want them all to kind of live in this space so everybody can see and hear that Asians have a place and have had a place in hockey for a very long time. And so what's most meaningful to me now is the community that's been sort of built around this. So it's a tiny little community right now, but it's growing. You know, I had conversations with people at that community skate where they were like, you know, after Chad gave his talk about Larry Kwong, people were like, I didn't even realize that like Larry Kwong was a thing and that like Asian people are very much a part of hockey. So like, you know, and anytime I mention to somebody that like, hey, the last 2 seasons, the highest scoring American player is a Filipino American, like people are like, wait, what? Yeah.
Nate, you should totally make a Discord, low key.
Yeah, you know what? So I'm thinking about it. I had a Discord server that I built for something else another project I had worked on, and I think what I want to do is really just sort of build the community overall a little bit more, especially since I think Instagram followers for me, because that's the social media platform I'm most active on. I think seeing the number of Instagram followers reach a certain threshold, I think that's when I'll feel comfortable starting a Discord server, just because the only reason I'm saying this is because I literally saw people posting in my Discord like, hey, I'm a queer Asian person, I'm looking for community. And I was like, damn, should I make like an Asians and hockey channel? And I was like, your page would be perfect for that.
And I could just direct them there.
Yeah, I think I would like to. I guess we'll see.
Okay,
We'll see.
no pressure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just thought of it
Well,
because you were talking about.
No,
community.
absolutely.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I do want to, but let's talk offline a little bit about that stuff.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I had for today. Thank you so much, Nate, for having me on. It's honestly such an honor because this is literally one of my favorite podcasts, and I've learned seriously so much from this podcast, and I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ava. And thanks for taking the reins today and for putting me in the hot seat. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
This is like Freaky Friday.
A little bit. You know what? I think I'll let you take over the podcast again at some point in the future.
Sounds good. We recorded this episode over a month ago, and a lot has happened since then. At the time, you didn't realize that you'd be publishing it on the 1-year anniversary of the pod, so congrats to you, Asians in Hockey. I'm so excited to be a part of this special occasion. Second, between the time we originally recorded this episode and today, we got to hang out in real life together in New York City. It was such a big weekend for a lot of people, so I feel like we need to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. So I think let's just go chronological. How about we talk, what did we do on Friday night?
Yeah, we went to hang out and watch some PWHL. I initially invited Nate to go to Blazers Bar in Brooklyn, which is a women's sports bar, because I really want to check out the different women's sports bars in the city. But unfortunately, I forgot that it was literally Final Four March Madness women's basketball. So obviously it was super packed.
Yeah, we couldn't fit in there. And they did put on their Instagram account that they were going to be showing the Ottawa Charge and Montreal Victoire game. But I mean, by the time we got there, I don't even know if they had a TV playing the game. If they did, it was probably like in the back corner, and it was overflow. Like the bar was pretty small, and there was a crowd of people just kind of standing outside, hovering around, watching women's basketball, which is cool, but not the sport that we were there for. So you hopped on Google Maps and found this little, I guess, like soccer pub. It kind of was like German themed, but I do want to shout out Banter Bar in Brooklyn for hooking us up with the game and giving us a little nook that we could watch it in, which was kind of cool just for our little group to sit and watch the game. And we met a couple on vacation in New York City from England. They're from London and happen to be fans of my favorite soccer team. But this isn't a soccer podcast, so we'll move on. Let's talk a. Go ahead.
Not a soccer podcast, but I just want to point out Nate is a huge soccer fan. You probably can't tell that from this hockey podcast, but he is a huge soccer fan, so that was fun.
Yeah, I am. And I've got one of the things I love is kind of the crossover with the New York Sirens and Gotham FC, because they play so close to each other, and their respective fan communities really intertwine with each other. And I'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about Saturday, but let's talk about the hockey on Friday night. The game that we watched. We didn't watch the other game. We just watched the Ottawa-Montreal game. But what did you think? I mean, it was kind of a big deal for Ottawa because they set a new attendance record at the Canadian Tire Center, didn't they?
Yeah, really happy for Ottawa. I mean, there's been some ongoing drama with their arena situation, as you may know, like TV Place. They're thinking of remodeling it to actually have even less seats. But Canadian Tire Centers, where the Ottawa Senators play, that arena is honestly kind of tough for some fans to get to because it's not super accessible by public transit. So really good to see that turnout for them, but it's sad that they got shut out.
Yeah. I was also bummed that the Charge got shut out, but that was like no fault of their own. Honestly, they played a really good game. I guess the headline certainly was Sandra Abstrider, right? Like that was, she owned that show. Like that was her first career shutout on 39 saves in it. Like that's wild.
39 States is wild. I'm so happy for her.
Yeah.
Like,
and
we're
weird.
not getting.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out weird little coincidence that we were at this German themed bar the night that Abstrider got her shutout. Just putting it out there. It was we were the reason.
We were the reason. I was just gonna say, like, Montreal looks so good. Like, I don't want to be that person being like, this is the year, but like low key, this is the year.
I feel like it is. They look unstoppable. I mean, of course there's the big, the big tiny little elephant in the room that is Aaron Frankel.
Right.
So, that's always going to be the X factor. So, we could say, and I would love to say this is Montreal's year, but Aaron Frankel exists. And as long as she's in net, anything's possible. So I don't know. I would love to see Montreal win, but at the same time, I do think Aaron Frankel's riding quite the high after winning the gold medal at the Olympics and then absolutely standing on her head since then. And then I also made a comment not too long after the Olympics that like Boston needs to start scoring. Like they can't just rely on Aaron Frankel to bail them out when they only score one goal. And then I feel like as soon as I said that, they started scoring. So I don't know. It could be Boston's season.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Boston is absolutely cooking. I'm so happy. Sorry, I could talk for hours about this, but yeah. Jesse Eldridge, my torrent who got traded to Boston, like seeing her shine on that team, I'm like, ooh, Boston looks really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh God, it's scary. It's actually legit scary. Okay, so moving on from the hockey on Friday night, you had your first vodka slice. What'd you think? And then how would you rank it compared to other New York pizza that you've had?
Okay, well, I'm biased because I love vodka sauce. So when I saw that there was a vodka slice, I was like, how have I not had this before? I thought it was really, really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I would rank it pretty high considering that you can't get it in other cities.
True.
Cool. So let's move on to Saturday. What did you get up to pregame? Because when we were hanging out at the bar, you weren't even planning to go to the Madison Square Garden game.
Yeah, so when the tickets originally went on sale, I was like, sure, let me pick up the tickets. I waited until I was like, they went on sale. Let me wait till the end of the week because I was really busy that week. And then I ended up forgetting at the end of the week. And it wasn't until like a few days later that I remembered, oh shit, I got to buy the tickets. So I went online and they had jumped from like $50 a pop to almost $200. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be spending $400 for these tickets. So that's when I prioritized looking around for like a watch party to go watch the game somewhere nearby. But I wanted to be like in the area of MSG so I could kind of take in the atmosphere. So I ended up getting in touch with Trish, who is the organizer for the Echo, the independent Sirens fan group. And she and I ended up working together because she hadn't finalized their plans. So we ended up working together on trying to secure a bar in the area. And then they hosted their party. So I made plans to go to the pregame party and then stay at that bar and watch the game. But then my friend texted me and said, hey, did you check day of? Because tickets that were $150 yesterday are now $60. So I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to jump on this now. Then I hopped online and like they were disappearing as I was adding them to my cart. So I ended up getting like real frantic and started searching all kinds of other websites like the SeatGeek and other, I forgot what other sites, StubHub, all of those. Finally landed on a pair of tickets that were $45 per ticket, way up in the 300s. So I figured, okay, it's fine. I'll be sitting in the nosebleeds, but at least I'll be in the arena. It turned out they were lounge tickets. So
that's so nice.
Yeah. So that's like a convoluted way of saying I did end up in the arena. I had a lot of fun, but let's talk pregame. So What did you do pre-game?
Yeah, it was super fun. I was actually staying with a friend from college because I went to Columbia in New York. So I met up with some friends from college. We saw the American woodcock in Bryant Park. I don't know if you've heard of that bird. It's like really popular right now.
So, for the bird people.
No, it's popular for everybody.
No, I was just saying, for the bird people who are listening to the podcast, this is your moment.
Yes. And then I also got to meet up with Coach Jackie, who does like amazing women's sports content, as well as Kate, who does like other sports content. So we all got hot pot together and then rolled up to the arena.
Nice. And you did make some content with them, which I saw on Instagram, which looked like a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to do the KK Harvey dance, like KK Harvey, Layla. I was always doing
oh
like
yeah.
Yeah.
And KK Harvey was at the game, which was pretty cool. Yeah. So I ended up going to the Echoes party, which was a lot of fun. We watched the Gotham FC game. There was plenty of great beer and food. It's this Irish pub called Tara Moor. Great spot. And ended up bumping into Madison and Anya Packer, who were hanging out at the party. So we got a chance to catch up a little bit, not a whole ton, because everybody wanted to come and say hi. But I had gotten to know them back in the Metropolitan Riveters days, when Anya was the GM of the Riveters and Madison was the captain of the team. So it was kind of cool to briefly touch base with them for a few minutes, and then after that we made our way over to the arena, and we got there early so we could watch warm-ups and everything. And I was also like, I have no idea. I've never been to Madison Square Garden, at least inside. So I didn't know where my seats were. I didn't know what the process was like. So I'm like, let me just get there early so I don't miss out on anything. But yeah, it was cool.
Same. That was also my first time watching hockey at Madison Square Garden. I felt like walking into the arena took so long.
It did.
It was like going through security and then getting your ticket scanned and like going up the many escalators. I was like, whoa, this is a whole experience.
It really was. And like I'm used to Bell Center and Prudential Center, which are two vastly different experiences. But now adding Madison Square Garden to the mix, there's nothing similar to either of those experiences. Like it's a totally different kind of setup. In retrospect, like just being there for a hockey game, it really did feel, I don't know, like there was something almost spiritual or mystical about the experience, right? You felt that?
Yeah, I did feel that. Like we were all partaking in this experience together. Everybody knew like what a special night it was. Like there was definitely something in the air for sure.
Yeah. And like mix that in with like the history of Madison Square Garden and everything that had taken place in that building. And then here we were making history yet again with another massive moment. I don't want to get too like belabor the whole, this is a big moment for women's hockey, because yes, it is. A few things to point out, like it's the first ever professional women's hockey game at MSG. The Sirens set the U.S. attendance record at 18,006. It's coming on the heels of women's hockey blowing up after this year's Olympics, and just kind of a growth in hockey fandom overall, not the least of which being partly as a result of heated rivalry. But like women's hockey is sort of seeing this massive moment. And I'm excited about it. And I think like Madison Square Garden sort of served as like a culmination of a lot of different things. So it did feel so big. But the reason I say I don't want to just like sit on that is because it was some damn good hockey in and of itself. Like, I don't want, because it would have been one thing if like we could all say, yay, women played at Madison Square Garden, and then that's the end of the story. But like,
Yeah.
holy shit, what a game.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to talk a little bit more about the attendance just because I feel like from my perspective, it was so interesting, not just experiencing it and the game as well, but like seeing it through other people's eyes, right? Because like I'm so privileged, like over here in Seattle, like not to brag, but like the crowds in Seattle are like spectacular.
Yeah.
Like we've had multiple crowds of like over 16,000 fans. And like, so in my mind, I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to say it's normal, but it's like kind of normal. But then like to go to New York and then to like sit next to people who it's like their first ever like PWHL game or their first like PWHL game with this many fans, it gives you a whole new appreciation for it. So I think just being part of the audience and like experiencing it through other people's eyes was amazing. And also the game being amazing was so awesome because I feel like there's definitely been times when I take my friends to games and if the game isn't a banger, I'm like, okay, you have to come back, which like kind of rare that the game's not a banger in the PWHL, but like to have the game be so good was just like, it just took everything to the next level. The night was absolutely perfect.
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess let's talk a little bit about the game. I think the first few minutes, it was a little dicey. I did feel like everybody was kind of getting a feel for where they were at, and after coming after the anthems and the starting lineups, it felt like there was so much weight in there, and the players were all just kind of feeling things out. But somebody was going to blow the lid off of that moment, and it was Quebec's own Emmy Facteau. And
happy birthday, Emmy Facteau.
What a hit that was. And to be fair, that would have been a major in the NHL as well. Because that was, elbow making contact with the head. Big no-no. But at the same time, I don't think it was necessarily like a dirty hit. I don't think it was like there was any real intention to do anything other than just make a play. But it was unfortunate the way, I mean, she obviously chicken wing, like it was a devastating hit, and we heard it all around the arena. And it sucks for Michaela Grant-Mentis. Just like coming off the heels of another kind of bone-jarring hit. So, but I think also there's a little bit of a lesson learned here for her. Like, this is a new level of hockey. And when you're coming out of a corner like that, I think if I'm remembering correctly, she picked up the puck. She took 1 second to like check what was around her, and then started moving with her head down. And like at my level of hockey, you could do that. I could skate like the length of the ice with my head down and just rely on my peripheral vision to make sure I'm not going to get blasted. But like at this level of hockey, you have to skate with your head up. And she started moving with her head down, and that's when she got blown up. So, but that, I really felt like that just blew the lid off of the arena. Like at that moment, everybody that was on the ice, they went after each other. Everything exploded, and then the fans just ate it all up. I think the atmosphere completely changed, and it was game on at that moment.
Yeah, I do feel like that completely set the tone for the rest of the game, because at the same time, like, there's so much pressure on these players, like you mentioned, and like the crowd is just sitting there like waiting for something to happen. So like as soon as that happened, it was like, okay, let's go, you know? So
yeah, I did feel like at that moment, everybody just kind of got their feelers, right? And it was like, okay, we're here, we're on the ice, and we're just going to go nuts. And then but it was at the end of the first period, and New York ended up on the penalty kill, and it was a 5-minute penalty kill that they had to kill off going into the second period as well. So they killed it off. They ended the the first period, but then had to come out into the second period shorthanded, which is always tough to do. And Carpy, man.
I love Alex Carpenter, and I feel like this was just so perfect for her as well. I mean, both Alex Carpenter and Corinne Schroeder in net on Seattle Torrent, because, you know, they were like New York Sirens. Like, they really like helped build that team. So I think it was so special for them to also get their moment at Madison Square Garden. Like, I don't know. I just thought that was so perfect.
I also really appreciated how the fans gave them both a massive ovation during the starting lineups, and like as like mad respect for everything that you did for our franchise. But as soon as Carpy touched the puck, the fans were like letting her have it, giving her stick. It was beautiful. And then she scored that goal and immediately just finger to the lips.
That's Sally. That was so hard. Like the Be Quiet Sally in the sold out Madison Square Garden. Like, I know she was planning that out. So good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Although, you know, I was on the receiving end of it as a Sirens fan. And it doesn't feel so good, but at the same time, you can see it coming. You could see how Carpy was just like, like planning. She like immediately that puck goes in and she's just like, Oh, it was so good. And then same with Hillary Knight, right? Like she got a big ovation when they announced her name. And then during the game, soon as she touches the puck, those fans, they are giving it to her.
That's what I love about this as well, because I feel like when you see these arenas sold out, people are like, oh, it's just novelty, or people are just coming here to like, it's because it's popular right now, but it's not going to be popular forever. But it's like when you hear people like booing Hillary Knight, it's like, oh no, we're locked in.
Yeah,
we're locked in.
Yeah, these are the fans. Like they're women's hockey fans at the announcement, but then they're Sirens fans there, and they know they're Sirens fans because they know what they need to do. They all have the assignment, you know.
Right.
It was oh man, it was so much fun. Yeah, so the even though the game was scoreless throughout the rest of the second period and most of the third period, it still felt like energetic and because there are some games where you're watching it and like nobody's scoring, but it feels like the score line, right? It feels like, okay, nobody's scoring because nobody's got quality chances. It looks like they're skating through sludge. But this was fast. It was physical. There was a lot of momentum. There were a lot of good quality chances, but it really did feel like both goalies were just standing on their heads. Like,
For sure. And I know some people love like really high scoring hockey games. I do as well. But like to have it be so tense, like that was so exciting to me. And then have the pressure building of like the Sirens being down. Everybody's like wondering, like, can they get it done? Like, I love that feeling.
Yeah. And like, you know, sometimes you'll have these big marquee games that are at, you know, the big event, but there aren't really many implications other than, hey, we've got this big game at this, you know, location. Like when I was up in Montreal for what they called the battle at the summit between at then PWHL Montreal and PWHL Toronto before they became the Victoire and the Scepters. At the Bell Center, you know, 21,000 fans. It was a moment, but it also didn't have very many implications outside of the game itself. This one at MSG, I mean, there are playoff implications riding on this game, you know? These like, granted, Seattle is pretty much out of the running, but at the same time, the points totals are not that far away, and at least at the time of the game, you know, they could make some moves. So, and New York is fighting for that last playoff spot. So there was a lot riding on this game. So to have all of that in there with this really tense, fast-paced game, despite the scoreline, I don't know. I was riveted.
Yeah, I was riveted as well. And like Sarah, let's talk about Sarah Fillier.
Yeah,
because
I was waiting to kind of build up the moment, but go ahead. Let's bring it in here. Sarah Fillier, who right there. There's my Philly jersey.
She is such a superstar. She is such a superstar, and I felt like I think it was the Wednesday before she had her first ever career hat trick, and I was like, "Oh, if this is the Sarah Fillier we're getting at Madison Square Garden, I am seated." Like, he is just so exciting, and I'm so happy for Sirens fans that they get to have Sarah Fillier, superstar Sarah Fillier, play in their city. Like, to have her like step up and be clutch like that.
Oh my God.
Like, I don't know. When she did that, I was like, okay, like you're like cementing your name in Sirens history right now.
Oh, absolutely. And like going back to that previous game, not only her first hat trick, but to get the overtime game winner. Like that's rowdy. Like that game, that was another one. Just I was watching it on TV. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go. But man, she's like the thing that's making me nervous is the looming expansion. Like the Sirens better protect. The problem is like who do we protect? We've got, a lot of names that we want to hang on to, and she does kind of feel like potential face of the franchise, but like you've got her, you've got Casey O'Brien, you've got Carlton Kova, it's like, what do you do?
I mean, I feel like Fillier is definitely face of the franchise.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And she's a Princeton girl. So, she's got roots here, even though I know she's a Ontario native, but like coming up through the Princeton hockey system, you kind of I feel like you got to stay here. You came through Princeton and then you get drafted by New York. This is home at this point, right? I don't know. We'll see what New York does. It's kind of up to them because if they don't protect her, she's going. Like,
right.
Like whoever the future team is, they're not leaving her on the table. If she's available, that's a player that you can't. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So Fillier at the end of the third period, getting that tying goal. Really, there was like I'm forgetting how much time was left, but there wasn't really much time at all left. Was there like maybe
I don't remember.
Maybe like a couple minutes, like 2-3 minutes left in regulation when she scored that goal?
Yeah, I want to say like 3-4 minutes. I don't know. It was something near the end where I was like looking at the clock and the clock was counting down, and I was like, I'm starting to actually get concerned here.
Yeah, because like here we are, this historic moment at Madison Square Garden, and this crowd doesn't get the chance to sort of blow up,
Yeah.
But thankfully we did. We got that goal. We heard Empire State of Mind, and then rolled into overtime, and oh my God, was overtime tense.
Overtime? Oh my God. I freaking love overtime because it's like pure adrenaline to me. And I also especially love the game started at like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was like the middle of the night. Like I felt like it was so late. And so like I love the vibe of like extra hockey. Like, it was so exciting.
Oh my God, it was wild. And then couldn't even settle it in overtime. So we had to go to a penalty shootout, and I will say I love this difference. I love pretty much all the differences between NHL and PWHL rules, but this difference in being able to reuse shooters, that I think is great, because like if your penalty shootout goes too far and you start going really deep into your bench, you've got a bunch of players who don't even know how to take a penalty shot, and then everybody's missing. And then how long do you have to sit there before somebody gets lucky, especially if you've got two goalies that are standing on their heads the entire game, which is likely the reason that you're in the shootout to begin with. So to be able to reuse shooters, I think is so key. Although it didn't really factor into this game because Carpy got her first goal, but when she went back out there, she couldn't seal the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the extra level of like psychological and tactical battles. Like, what do you mean I have to make a save against Alex Carpenter again? You know,
Right?
like it's just
Oh.
so exciting. And I especially loved like the shootouts because it's like, yeah, all of these fans came here to watch hockey, so let's give them everything,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of shootouts, especially like in like when like I would never want shootouts in the playoffs. Just I don't want to go anywhere near that. But what I will say is that for a game like that, where it's this marquee event and you've got people traveling from all over the country, you have, the biggest hockey arena in the US, the world's most famous arena, quote unquote. To be able to get all styles of hockey from 5-on-5 to 3-on-3 to shootout, it makes it kind of worth it.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic.
Yeah. And then of course Fillier, right? She opened it up, giving the Sirens the shootout lead. And who was it that? Oh yeah, Carpy scored the tying goal, and then
It was Maya
Nyland
Person.
Person. Yeah.
Defender, Maya Nyland Person.
Which I still was like, so that to me, that made me really nervous when I saw her go up for the shootout, because I was like, what? But then I'm like, okay, well, Fargo, then he's got to know what he's doing, because like you don't put your defender out there unless you've seen enough from them in practice that proves this person can handle a shootout. Like, so I think I had all of those thoughts go through my mind as she was skating up. And then I'm like, no, confidence. Like, this is a decision that you don't just do this without thinking through it. So, and it paid off.
Exactly. And with like the reusing players thing, it's like, yeah, you could just spam Fillier. So
Yeah.
I feel like that shows how intentional it is to choose her.
Exactly. And then eventually Seattle went back to Carpy, and Ozzy.
Yeah, shout out to Kaylee Osborne. Shout out Ozzy.
Yeah, she just shut the door on her. I guess I think as a goalie, right? You were saying that feeling of having to deal with Carpy again, but I wonder if like Ozzy's thinking like, good, I get to prove myself, you know? Like,
that's such a perfect point. Yeah.
Because goalies are a different breed, man. Like, there's just some you have to be a little bit nuts to want to sit there and get like 90-mile-an-hour pucks shot at your face. Like,
for real.
So, but Ozzy, oh my God, what an absolute baller she is.
That was the perfect ending as well. Like just seeing her celly at the end.
Oh yeah.
And then everybody coming to hug her. Like I feel like that was just the perfect note to end on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And speaking of notes to end on, so the you put together like a little first intermission meetup during the game, and that was quite the showing. Like there were so many people that I saw and didn't get to say hi to because I was in the middle of saying hi to someone else and having like a conversation. There were so many people there that I'm like, I know you from all over the internet.
Yeah, it was so crazy. Like, honestly, it was overwhelming because it was like everybody ever that like, it's funny when you start posting online and you think people aren't going to see it, but then you end up really like developing these genuine connections with other people, even if you've never met them in real life. So just to see people like check hockey report, check women's hockey report like that. Preston and like their team, like they do such amazing coverage of Czech women's hockey, which is like this specific thing that I'm interested in. And like, Also like Lacey from Double Hockey Sticks, who makes those really funny shirts. And then like all the people in my Discord as well. Like I actually felt bad because there was like so much going on that I was like, I feel like I can't talk to everybody at once.
Mm-hmm.
But even in those like fleeting moments, it was kind of crazy to be like, whoa, we're all experiencing this game together.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So who, I guess you had Czech Hockey Report that you were mentioning. I saw that like people that are from your locality were there. Gloves Off Seattle. I didn't even get a chance to say hi, but I saw them. And then I do want to shout out Rose, who's from your area. They are the first ever donor to the Asians in Hockey podcast. And like they had donated a while ago, several months ago. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever thought like, oh, I'm going to meet this person randomly at MSG. And
wow,
there they were. I got a tap on the shoulder and they were like, hey, aren't you Asians in hockey? I was like, oh my God. And then finding out that there were like people who listened to this podcast. I had no idea that had just like,
so many people listen to this podcast.
And they're just like, as I was like handing out some stickers to people, someone reached out and was just like, I love this podcast. And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, oh my God, are you? I know your voice. You're Nate. I'm like, yeah. It was pretty cool. So, yeah, that right there was just such a fun experience. I think that's also part of what made the MSG game an even bigger moment for women's hockey and like this whole community. Like I love, and I always talk about the past and the NWHL, the PHF, the CWHL, and that. But like these kinds of communities weren't really in existence. I mean, there were I think a few creators here and there, but nothing like what we have here where they're like really building these connections. Like the Discord server for women's hockey, it's small, it's quiet, it's full of millennials like me who don't really use Discord quite as much as people who are a little younger, and just really build community that way. So it was so cool to be a part of this and to see it all kind of culminating here in New York City. And I'm so proud of my city. Like we hosted all of these people. We hosted this incredible game. And I don't know, it just felt so nice to have you all here.
Aw, thanks for having me.
And so thanks for sitting down and doing a recap. Obviously, we'll plug this into the full episode at large. But it was great catching up after we got to sit and watch hockey together 2 nights in a row in person and grab some pizza together. So and that whole liter of beer that you definitely drank.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so crazy even thinking about it now. Like I feel like I'm still processing it, and then in like 10 years to like look back and be like, hey, we were at that game.
Yeah.
Like this is such a special moment in history right now. So just making sure we don't take it for granted and we savor it, and many more sellouts to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to give a little plug. I started reading Ice in Their Veins by Ian Kennedy, which basically tracks the history of women's hockey. And I'm going to be using it because I'm working on a research paper for one of my classes that's kind of talking about hockey culture in my communications class. So I'm using that book as a source. But so far, it's a really, really interesting narrative that is absolutely worth the read. I'm only a couple chapters in, and I already am like, I recommend this book to anybody who's curious about the history of women's hockey.
Ooh, nice plug. And then I'm going to plug my weekly newsletter.
Yes, do it.
I just sent out like a weekly recap of that week's PWHL games. And then I also include some personal adventures. Like this week, I'm building a CJ Jackson bobblehead cyber deck, AKA PC Jackson. So stay tuned.
That is a great name.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out again. And I'll see you around on the internet.
See ya.
That's it for today's episode. Be sure to tune in next time when I'll be talking with Princess Clemente, also known as Crowned Athlete, an everyday athlete and content creator who shares her experiences of what it's like to learn new sports as an adult. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Asians in Hockey is a part of the Potluck Podcast Collective and is hosted and produced by me, Nate Nakau. Contributing producers are Chad Soong and Chris Wu. If you like what you heard, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share this podcast with your friends. To keep up with us on socials, follow us on Instagram and Threads at Asians in Hockey and on Blue Sky at asiansinhockey.com. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/asiansinhockey. And please feel free to shoot me an email at contact@asiansinhockey.com, and don't forget to visit asiansinhockey.com for more great content. See you next time on the Asians in Hockey podcast.